Captain Jake Martinez sat in his chair on the bridge of the New Horizon. The ship was big, almost a mile long, but it looked old and simple compared to the sleek alien vessels that had just appeared around them. Jake was not worried, though. He had seen worse things in his 40 years of space travel. "Captain, we have 5 alien ships surrounding us," said his communications officer, a young woman named Beth Parker. "They are demanding we stop our engines and prepare to be boarded." Jake looked at the main screen. The alien ships were beautiful in a cold way. They had smooth silver hulls and glowing blue lights. Each ship was about half the size of the New Horizon, but Jake knew they probably had much better weapons. "What do they want?" Jake asked. "They say we are in their space without permission," Beth replied. "They want to inspect our cargo and crew. They also want us to pay some kind of tax." Jake smiled a little. These aliens clearly thought humans were weak and easy to push around. Most species in the galaxy seemed to think that way about humans. The record showed that humans had only discovered faster than light travel 50 years ago. To most aliens, that made humans babies in terms of space technology. "Tell them we are just passing through," Jake said calmly. "We don't want any trouble." Down in the engine room, Lisa Grant was watching her instruments carefully. Lisa was the chief engineer, and she had been working on human ships for 20 years. She knew every sound and vibration the New Horizon made. Right now, something was making her nervous. "The aliens are powering up their weapons," she told her assistant, a man named Carl who was new to the job. "I can feel the energy building up around us." Carl looked confused. "How can you feel energy building up?" Lisa did not answer. She was too busy watching her own screens. The New Horizon had systems that most people did not know about. Even Carl, who worked in the engine room, did not know about all of them. Back on the bridge, Commander Vextar of the Zephyrian Imperial Fleet was getting angry. He had sent 3 messages to the human ship, and they were not obeying his orders. This was not how things were supposed to work. "Human vessel," he said into his communicator, "you will shut down your engines now and prepare to be boarded. If you do not comply, we will use force." Jake Martinez heard the threat and sighed. He had hoped to avoid this kind of situation. Humans tried very hard to stay out of trouble with the big alien empires, but sometimes trouble found them anyway. "Lisa," Jake said into his communicator, "are you ready down there?" "Always ready, Captain," Lisa replied from the engine room. She was now standing in front of a control panel that looked very different from the rest of the ship's equipment. It was made of some kind of crystal material that seemed to glow with its own light. Commander Vextar was studying the human ship on his screens. According to his files, humans used simple fusion engines and basic metal hulls. Their weapons were supposed to be primitive projectile cannons and maybe some basic energy weapons. The ship in front of him looked exactly like what he expected from such a backward species. "Fire a warning shot across their bow," Vextar ordered his weapons officer. The Zephyrian ship fired a bright blue energy beam that streaked past the New Horizon. It was meant to show the humans how powerful Zephyrian weapons were. Instead, something very strange happened. The energy from the warning shot seemed to bend in space as it got near the human ship. Instead of flying past harmlessly, the energy seemed to get absorbed into the hull of the New Horizon. The human ship began to glow with a soft white light. "What just happened?" Vextar demanded. His science officer, a nervous alien named Koltar, was staring at his instruments in confusion. "Commander, our energy blast did not behave normally. It appears to have been absorbed by the human vessel. But that should be impossible. Their hull is made of simple metal." "Fire again," Vextar ordered. "This time, aim to disable their engines." The Zephyrian ships fired their main weapons. Powerful energy beams that could cut through the armor of any known ship struck the New Horizon from 5 different directions. The beams should have torn the human ship apart. Instead, the energy simply disappeared when it touched the hull. The New Horizon continued to glow, but now the light was brighter. The ship looked like it was made of solid light instead of metal. On the bridge of the New Horizon, Jake Martinez was still sitting calmly in his chair. The ship had not even shaken when the alien weapons hit it. "Should we return fire, Captain?" asked his tactical officer, a man named Pete who had been in the military before joining the merchant fleet. No need, Jake replied. Lisa, please show our new friends that we are not as helpless as they think. Down in the engine room, Lisa Grant placed her hand on the crystal control panel. The material felt warm under her palm, almost like it was alive. She closed her eyes and thought about what she wanted the ship to do. The new horizon began to change. The metal hull started to shift and flow like liquid, but it stayed solid. Parts of the ship that had looked like simple cargo holds opened up to reveal systems that had not been there moments before. Weapons that looked like they were made of pure energy appeared along the sides of the ship. But the most shocking thing was what happened to space around the new horizon. Reality itself seemed to bend and twist around the human ship. Stars in the distance appeared to move, even though everyone knew that was impossible. Commander Vextar watched in horror as his sensors stopped making sense. According to his instruments, the human ship was no longer entirely in normal space. Parts of it seemed to exist in several different dimensions at the same time. That cannot be possible, he whispered. Then the new horizon simply vanished. It did not jump to hyperspace or use any kind of drive system that Vextar recognized. One moment it was there, glowing like a small star. The next moment, empty space filled the area where it had been. The only thing left behind was a simple message that appeared on all the Zephyrian ship's communication systems at the same time. It was in perfect Zephyrian language, even though humans were not supposed to know how to speak it. The message said, "Thank you for the energy donation. Have a pleasant day." Commander Vextar stared at the empty space where the impossible human ship had been. He realized that everything his people thought they knew about humans was completely wrong. And that was a very frightening thought. Grand Admiral Zorthak sat at the head of the massive council table on Zephyr Prime. The Imperial capital world was the most important planet in the galaxy, and this room was where all the big decisions were made. Today, he was listening to a report that made no sense at all. Commander Vextar stood at attention in front of the council. His uniform was perfect, his medals shining, but his hands were shaking slightly. He had been in the Imperial fleet for 30 years and had never filed a report like this one. "Let me understand this correctly," said Grand Admiral Zorthak slowly. "You are telling us that a single human cargo ship absorbed the firepower of 5 Imperial warships and then disappeared into thin air." "Yes, sir," Vextar replied. "The human vessel demonstrated technology that our science teams cannot explain. It violated several known laws of physics." Science Minister Yeldan laughed from his seat at the council table. He was an old alien, with gray skin and too many eyes. He had been studying technology for over 100 years and thought he knew everything about what was possible. "Commander," Yeldan said with a condescending tone, "humans barely discovered space travel 50 years ago. They use fusion engines that we discarded centuries ago. Their weapons are primitive projectile cannons. They could not possibly have developed anything that could challenge Imperial technology." "With respect, Minister," Vextar said, "I know what I saw. The human ship did things that should be impossible." Admiral Kethron, who was sitting next to the Science Minister, shook his head. "Commander, your sensors must have malfunctioned. Perhaps the humans used some kind of holographic trickery to confuse your readings." "All 5 ships recorded the same impossible readings," Vextar insisted. "And we tested our sensors immediately afterward. Everything was working perfectly." Grand Admiral Zorthak waved his hand dismissively. "Humans are clever, I will give them that. But they are still a primitive species. File your report and return to your duties. We will investigate this supposed malfunction in your equipment." "Commander," Vextar wanted to argue more, but he knew it was useless. The council had already decided that his report was impossible, so they were going to ignore it. He saluted and left the room, feeling frustrated and worried. After Vextar left, Intelligence Director Naltek entered the council chamber. She was carrying a datapad with several files on it. Her expression was troubled. "Grand Admiral," she said, "we have been receiving some unusual reports about human activities across the galaxy." "What kind of reports?" Zorthak asked. Naltek activated a holographic display that showed a map of the galaxy. Several star systems were marked with red dots. "These are locations where our agents have observed human traders and diplomats in the past month." She pointed to one of the red dots. Here, a human trade representative named Amy Stevens was seen negotiating with the Corvan Republic. She was offering to sell them power generators that our experts say should not be possible to build with current technology. Science Minister Yeldon looked at the display with annoyance. Humans are probably trying to sell the Corvans fake technology. It is a common trick among primitive species. That is what we thought too, Naltek continued. But our agent managed to scan one of the generators. It was producing energy at rates that exceed our theoretical maximums. She pointed to another red dot. Here, a human ambassador named Danny Cooper was meeting with the leaders of 3 different mining colonies. He was carrying a device that our long-range scanners could not identify. When we tried to get a closer look, the device seemed to interfere with our sensors. Admiral Kethran frowned. What do you mean it interfered with your sensors? Our scanning equipment stopped working whenever it was pointed at the device, Naltek explained. Not jammed, not blocked. It simply stopped working, as if the device made our sensors forget how to function. Grand Admiral Zorthak was beginning to feel uncomfortable. Continue your report. The most disturbing reports come from the outer rim territories, Naltek said, highlighting several more star systems. Human colonies have been established in areas that our surveys marked as completely uninhabitable. Perhaps our surveys were wrong, suggested Science Minister Yeldon. We sent ships to verify, Naltek replied. The star systems are exactly as hostile as our surveys indicated. The radiation levels would kill most known life forms within hours, yet human colonies are thriving there. She changed the display to show detailed scans of one particular system. This system has a neutron star that emits deadly radiation across the entire area. No known technology can create shields strong enough to protect against it. Yet there is a human colony of 50,000 people living on the 3rd planet. That is impossible, Yeldon said firmly. Our agents conducted 3 separate verification missions, Naltek continued. The humans are definitely there. They have farms, cities, and even children playing in areas that should kill them instantly. Admiral Kethran looked at the data with growing concern. How are they surviving? We do not know, Naltek admitted. When our agents tried to get closer to investigate, strange things began happening to their ships. Navigation systems started giving impossible readings. Engines began working more efficiently than they should. One ship reported that their hull actually became stronger while they were in the area. Grand Admiral Zorthak stood up from his chair. Are you suggesting that humans have developed technology that can alter the fundamental laws of physics? I'm suggesting that we need to take these reports more seriously, Naltek replied. Our database shows that humans should still be using primitive fusion drives and basic metal alloys, but the evidence suggests they have capabilities far beyond what we understand. Science Minister Yeldon slammed his hand on the table. This is ridiculous. Humans are a young species. They have not had enough time to develop advanced technology. These reports must be the result of sensor errors, human trickery, or exaggerated accounts from nervous agents. Minister, Naltek said quietly, we have also been monitoring human communication networks. They discuss their technology very casually, as if the impossible things they do are completely normal to them. She activated an audio recording. The voices were clearly human, speaking in their own language with translation provided. Hey Lisa, how did the terraforming project go? Asked one voice. Pretty well, Jake, replied another voice that sounded like a woman. We convinced the planet to be more cooperative. Should have a full ecosystem running by next month. Great. Did you have any trouble with the radiation from the local star? Nah, we just asked it to be less harmful. Works every time. The recording ended. The council chamber was completely silent for several long moments. Finally, Grand Admiral Zorthak spoke. Intelligence Director, I want you to assign our best agents to investigate human activities, but do it quietly. We do not want to alarm them if they truly have capabilities we do not understand. And if the reports are accurate? Naltek asked. Zorthak looked out the window at the Imperial fleet docked around Zephyr Prime. Thousands, of powerful warships that had kept the peace in the galaxy for 2,000 years. He wondered if they would be enough. Then we may need to reconsider our assumptions about humans, he said slowly. And that thought terrifies me more than any enemy we have ever faced. Agent Quindal was one of the best spies in the Imperial Intelligence Service. He had infiltrated dozens of alien civilizations over his career and had never failed a mission. But as he watched the human colony from his hidden observation post, he was beginning to think this might be his first failure. The colony was located on a planet that should not exist, according to Imperial star charts. This system contained only a dying red star and 3 dead rocks. Yet somehow, humans had built a thriving city on what used to be the second dead rock. Quindal adjusted his long-range scanner and tried to make sense of what he was seeing. The planet now had blue oceans, green forests, and white clouds. The atmosphere readings showed perfect conditions for human life. But this transformation should have taken thousands of years and massive terraforming equipment. This is impossible, Quindal muttered to himself. He had been watching the colony for 3 days, and everything he saw defied explanation. He activated his communication device and contacted his supervisor back on Zephyr Prime. Control? This is Agent Quindal reporting from the Kepler-7 system. Go ahead, Agent, came the reply from Intelligence Director Naltek. The reports about human colonies in uninhabitable systems are accurate, Quindal said. I am looking at a planet that was a dead rock 6 months ago according to our surveys. It is now a garden world with a population of approximately 200,000 humans. There was a long pause before Naltek replied. Agent, please verify your location. You may be in the wrong system. Quindal checked his navigation computer 3 times. I am in the correct location, Control. The humans have somehow made a dead planet into a living world in less than 6 months. He watched through his scanner as human children played in parks that had not existed a year ago. Adults walked through streets made of some kind of material that seemed to glow softly in the sunlight. The buildings themselves looked like they had grown naturally from the ground rather than being constructed. Control, Quindal continued. I need to get closer to investigate, but every time I try to approach the planet, my ship starts behaving strangely. Define strangely, Agent. My engines become more efficient. My life support systems work better than they should. My hull armor actually becomes stronger. It is as if being near the human colony improves my ship somehow. Meanwhile, on the Imperial Research Station orbiting Nexus Prime, Dr. Fornek was having his own impossible experiences. The Zephyrian scientist had been given samples of human technology to analyze, and nothing was making sense. He held up a piece of metal that was supposed to be from a human ship's hull. According to the database, humans use simple steel alloys for their ship construction, but the piece of metal in his hands contained elements that did not exist on the periodic table. Computer, analyze sample composition again. Dr. Fornek said to his laboratory's artificial intelligence. Sample contains unknown elements arranged in crystalline structures that should not be stable under normal physical laws, the computer replied. Material demonstrates properties that exceed theoretical maximums for tensile strength, thermal resistance, and energy conductivity. Dr. Fornek set the sample down and rubbed his eyes. He had been a scientist for 40 years and had never encountered anything like this. The human metal was not just better than Imperial materials. It seemed to ignore the basic rules about how matter was supposed to behave. He picked up another sample, this one supposedly from a human power generator. When he connected it to his testing equipment, the generator began producing more energy than it was consuming. That violated the fundamental law of conservation of energy. Computer, is this generator creating energy from nothing? Negative. Energy source appears to be drawing power from quantum fluctuations in local spacetime. This should not be possible with current technology. Dr. Fornek sat down heavily in his chair. The implications of what he was seeing were terrifying. If humans could manipulate spacetime itself, then they had capabilities that made Imperial technology look like primitive stone tools. Back in space, Agent Quindal had decided to risk getting closer to the human colony. He piloted his small scout ship toward the planet, ready to retreat if anything dangerous happened. As he entered the planet's atmosphere, his communication system suddenly activated on its own. A pleasant human voice spoke in perfect Imperial language. "Hello there, Imperial Scout Ship. This is Ben Clark, Colony Administrator. Would you like to come down for a visit?" Quindal nearly crashed his ship in surprise. His stealth systems were supposed to make him completely invisible to human sensors, yet somehow they had detected him easily. "How did you know I was here?" Quindal asked. "Oh, we always know when visitors arrive," Ben Clark replied cheerfully. "Our planet is pretty good at noticing new things. Would you like to land at our spaceport? We have some excellent coffee if you are interested." Quindal was trained to handle dangerous situations, but he had no idea how to respond to a human who was offering him coffee. "I am conducting official Imperial business." "Of course you are," Ben said. "You are probably trying to figure out how we terraform this planet so quickly. Most species are curious about that. The answer is pretty simple. We asked the planet nicely if it wanted to support life, and it said yes." "That is not how terraforming works," Quindal replied automatically. "It is how human terraforming works," Ben said with a laugh. "We found that planets are usually happy to cooperate if you approach them the right way. This planet was actually quite eager to have forests and oceans again." Quindal landed his ship at the human spaceport, mostly because he was too confused to do anything else. Ben Clark met him at the landing pad. He was a middle-aged human with gray hair and a friendly smile. He looked completely ordinary, which somehow made everything more unsettling. "Welcome to New Eden Colony," Ben said, offering Quindal a cup of steaming liquid. "How do you like our planet?" "Your planet should not exist," Quindal said bluntly. "Well, it did not exist until we built it," Ben replied. "But that is true of most colonies. The trick is convincing local reality that your changes are reasonable and beneficial." "You cannot convince reality to change," Quindal protested. Ben took a sip of his coffee and looked thoughtful. "Most species seem to think that reality is fixed and unchangeable. Humans discovered a long time ago that reality is actually quite flexible if you know how to work with it." He gestured toward the city behind them. "We do not force changes on planets. We negotiate with them. We explain what we want to do and why it would be good for everyone involved. Most planets are reasonable once you learn how to communicate properly." Quindal stared at the human colony administrator. Either Ben Clark was completely insane, or humans had developed abilities that no other species had ever imagined possible. "How do you communicate with a planet?" Quindal asked weakly. "The same way you communicate with anything else," Ben replied. "You listen carefully, you show respect, and you try to find solutions that work for everyone." At that moment, Quindal realized that every assumption the Empire had made about humans was wrong. They were not a primitive species using advanced technology. They were something far more dangerous, a species that had learned to cooperate with the universe itself. He finished his coffee, thanked Ben for his hospitality, and returned to his ship. As he flew back toward Imperial space, he tried to figure out how to write a report that anyone would believe. The truth was too impossible to accept, but it was also too dangerous to ignore. Fleet Admiral Morgeth stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Imperial destroyer Vengeance. Around him in space floated 11 other Imperial dreadnoughts, each one capable of destroying entire cities with a single weapon blast. This was the most powerful battle group in the Imperial fleet, and Morgeth was proud to command it. "Admiral," said his communications officer, "we have arrived at the disputed system. Long-range sensors are detecting 5 human vessels near the 4th planet." Morgeth looked at the tactical display. The human ships were small compared to his dreadnoughts. According to the computer, each human vessel was about the size of an Imperial patrol ship. He had 12 ships that were each 10 times larger than the biggest human vessel. "Scan their weapons and defenses," Morgeth ordered. His tactical officer, a young Zephyrian named Telkar, studied his instruments for several minutes. "Admiral, the scans are showing some unusual readings. The human ships appear to have no weapons or shields that we can identify." "No weapons?" Morgeth asked with surprise. "Then why are they here?" Before Telkar could answer, a human voice came over the communication system. The voice was calm and friendly, speaking perfect Imperial language. "Greetings, Imperial Fleet. This is Captain Tony Rodriguez of the Human Exploration Group. We are conducting peaceful research in this system. Is there something we can help you with? Morgeth activated his own communicator. Human Captain, you are in Imperial space without authorization. You will surrender your ships immediately and prepare to be boarded. There was a brief pause before Captain Rodriguez replied. Admiral, this system is not claimed by any government according to galactic law. We have as much right to be here as you do. Morgeth felt his anger rising. No one had ever spoken to him with such casual disrespect. Human, you will comply with Imperial orders or face the consequences. On the bridge of the human ship, Liberty, Captain Tony Rodriguez looked at his tactical officer, Kate Johnson. She was a woman in her 30s with short brown hair and calm eyes. She had served on human ships for 15 years and had seen many strange situations. Kate, what are the Imperial ships doing? Tony asked. Kate checked her instruments. They are powering up their main weapons, Captain. Looks like they want to make a demonstration of force. Tony nodded and activated his communicator to speak with his chief engineer. Ryan, are our field generators ready? Down in the engine room, Ryan Adams was standing next to a control system that looked nothing like traditional ship equipment. The controls were made of the same crystal material that Lisa Grant had used on the New Horizon, but this system was much larger and more complex. Field generators are standing by, Captain, Ryan replied. Should I activate full defensive protocol? Not yet, Tony said. Let us see what the Imperials do first. Fleet Admiral Morgeth had decided to make his point clear. Target the lead human vessel, he ordered. Fire a warning shot across their bow. The Imperial dreadnought Vengeance fired its main plasma cannon. The weapon was designed to punch through the heaviest armor and could vaporize a mountain. The bright green energy beam streaked across space toward the human ship Liberty. The energy beam struck an invisible barrier about 50 meters from the Liberty's hull and simply vanished. Not absorbed, not deflected, not scattered. It ceased to exist as if it had never been fired. What happened? Morgeth demanded. Telkar was staring at his instruments in confusion. Admiral, our plasma cannon fired normally, but the energy disappeared before reaching the human ship. I am reading no impact, no dispersion, no trace of our weapon at all. On the Liberty, Kate Johnson turned to her captain. Their weapon just got erased from reality when it hit our field boundary. Should I explain to them how our defenses work? No, need, Tony replied. They probably would not believe us anyway. Fleet Admiral Morgeth was not willing to accept what had happened. All ships target the human vessels. Full weapons barrage. 12 Imperial dreadnoughts opened fire at the same time. Plasma cannons, particle beams, and fusion torpedoes filled the space between the Imperial fleet and the human ships. It was enough firepower to destroy a small moon. Every single weapon vanished when it came within 50 meters of the human ships. The space around the human vessels briefly shimmered like heat waves, and then everything was quiet again. Impossible, Morgeth whispered. Captain Rodriguez activated his communicator again. Imperial Admiral, we really do not want any trouble. Are you sure you want to continue this? Morgeth was too shocked to reply. His most powerful weapons had been completely useless against whatever the humans were using for defense. Kate Johnson looked at her captain. Tony, they are trying to scan us with every sensor they have. Should I block them? Let them scan, Tony replied. They might learn something useful. On the Imperial flagship, Telkar was indeed scanning the human ships with everything available. What he found made no sense at all. Admiral, he said with a shaking voice, according to our sensors, the human ships are not entirely in normal space. Parts of them appear to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously. That is impossible, Morgeth said automatically. The human ships are also generating energy fields that our computers cannot classify, Telkar continued. The energy is not electromagnetic, not gravitational, not nuclear. It appears to be something completely unknown to our science. Ryan Adams activated his own communicator from the engine room of the Liberty. Captain, the Imperial ships are using some pretty impressive sensors. Their scanning is actually quite sophisticated. Can you give them a better demonstration? Tony asked. Sure thing, Captain. Ryan placed his hands on the crystal control system. The Liberty and the 4 other human ships began to change. Their hulls shifted from solid metal to something that looked like flowing liquid light. The ships grew larger, sprouting additional sections that had not been there moments before. But the most shocking change was what happened to space itself around the human fleet. Stars in the distance began to move, forming new patterns in the sky. The nearby planet suddenly appeared to have 2 moons instead of 1. On the Imperial flagship, every alarm system activated at once. Telkar was frantically checking his instruments, but nothing was working properly. Admiral, he said in panic, our navigation systems are reporting that we are in 17 different locations at the same time. Our engines are running at twice their normal efficiency. Our hull armor has become stronger than it was when we left the shipyard. Communications officer Zekatal suddenly looked up from his station. Admiral, I am receiving a message from the human fleet. But they are not using radio or any known communication method. The message is appearing directly in my mind. What does it say? Morgeth asked weakly. It says, we are sorry for the inconvenience. Please stand by while we restore normal space-time to your area. The human ships began to glow brighter. Reality twisted and bent around them like fabric being stretched. Then suddenly everything snapped back to normal. The stars returned to their proper positions. The planet had 1 moon again. The Imperial ships stopped receiving impossible readings from their instruments. But all 12 Imperial dreadnoughts were now drifting powerless in space. Their engines had shut down, their weapons were offline, and their life support was running on emergency power. The crews were unharmed, but their ships were completely disabled. Captain Rodriguez's voice came over the communication system one last time. Imperial Admiral, your ships will be functional again in about 1 hour. We have not damaged anything. We just convinced your systems to take a short rest. We suggest you return to Imperial space and report that humans prefer to be left alone. 5 human ships vanished, not through hyperspace or any known form of travel, but simply by ceasing to exist in that location. Fleet Admiral Morgeth sat in his command chair, staring at empty space where the impossible human fleet had been. In 30 years of military service, he had never encountered anything that challenged his understanding of reality so completely. Communications Officer Zektal managed to send one final message before their communication systems shut down completely. Command, this is Fleet Admiral Morgeth. The humans are not using technology, they are rewriting the laws of physics. Emperor Vashitar had ruled the Galactic Empire for 50 years. In all that time, he had never called an emergency session of the High Council. But today was different. Today, his most powerful fleet had been defeated by 5 small human ships. Without firing a single shot in return, the massive council chamber on Zephyr Prime was filled with the Empire's most important leaders. Military commanders, science ministers, and intelligence directors all sat around the enormous circular table. Everyone was talking at once, and nobody had any answers. Order, Emperor Vashitar said quietly, but his voice carried across the entire chamber. The room fell silent immediately. High Counselor Durvan, please read Fleet Admiral Morgeth's report. High Counselor Durvan was an ancient Zephyrian who had served the Empire for over a century. His voice shook slightly as he read from the datapad in his hands. 12 Imperial dreadnoughts engaged 5 human vessels in the disputed Kepler system. Human ships demonstrated impossible defensive capabilities that made Imperial weapons completely ineffective. Human vessels then disabled entire Imperial fleet without causing casualties. Fleet Admiral Morgeth concludes that humans possess technology that can manipulate the fundamental laws of physics. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. Science Minister Yeldan stood up from his seat, his face showing anger and disbelief. This is impossible, Yeldan declared. No species can manipulate physics itself. The humans must be using some kind of advanced holographic projection or sensor jamming technology. Minister, said Intelligence Director Naltek, we have now received similar reports from 17 different locations across the galaxy. Our agents have observed humans doing things that our science says cannot be done. Emperor Vashatar raised his hand for silence. What do our xenobiology experts say about human capabilities? Dr. Zilneth, the Empire's leading expert on alien species, stood up nervously. She was a small, green-skinned alien with large eyes that seemed to see everything. Your Majesty, she said. According to our databases, humans are a relatively young species with standard biological capabilities. They should not possess any abilities that other species do not have. Yet clearly they do possess such abilities, the Emperor replied. The question is how. At that moment, the chamber's main doors opened. A human walked into the room, followed by two other humans. The Imperial Guards had not stopped them or announced their arrival. They had simply appeared as if they belonged. There. The human in front was a man of middle age with brown hair and kind eyes. He wore simple clothes that looked comfortable but not fancy. Behind him walked a woman with red hair and a younger man with a friendly smile. Good morning, everyone, the human man said politely. I am Alex Mitchell, representing humanity in diplomatic matters. This is Dr. Nina Walsh, one of our scientists, and Pete Griffin, our cultural attaché. We apologize for arriving unannounced, but we thought it was time to have a proper conversation. Emperor Vashatar stared at the humans in shock. The imperial capital was the most heavily guarded location in the galaxy. No one could simply walk into the High Council chamber without being detected by hundreds of security systems. How did you get in here? Demanded Security Chief Cortell. We asked the building if we could come in, Pete Griffin replied with a smile. It was very accommodating once we explained that we wanted to have a peaceful discussion. Buildings cannot give permission, Security Chief Cortell said automatically. Most species think that, Alex Mitchell said gently. But humans have learned that almost everything in the universe is willing to cooperate if you approach it correctly. Science Minister Yeldan stepped forward aggressively. What kind of technology are you using? What weapons do you have hidden, Doctor? Nina Walsh looked at the Science Minister with curiosity. We are not using technology in the way you understand it, and we do not have any weapons. Then how did you defeat our fleet? Demanded Admiral Kethron. We did not defeat anyone, Alex Mitchell replied. We simply asked the weapons to stop working and the engines to take a rest. They agreed because our request was reasonable and caused no harm. You cannot ask weapons to stop working, Yeldan said angrily. Weapons are machines. They have no consciousness. Dr. Nina Walsh reached into what appeared to be empty air and pulled out a beautiful flower. The flower was bright, blue with silver petals, and it glowed softly with its own light. This flower is growing in my garden on Earth, she said, holding it up for everyone to see. I did not teleport it here. I simply reminded local space-time that the flower had always been here with me. The council chamber was completely silent. Everyone stared at the impossible flower that had appeared from nowhere. How? Whispered Dr. Zilneth. Humans discovered something that other species have not, Alex Mitchell explained. Reality is not fixed and unchangeable. Reality is actually very flexible and cooperative if you know how to work with it. He gestured to his companions. Nina can convince space and time to bring distant objects to her location. Pete can ask buildings and machines to be helpful and friendly. I can negotiate with entire planets to change their environments. That is not science, protested Science Minister Yeldan. That is impossible. Most species try to force reality to obey their will, Dr. Nina Walsh said patiently. They build machines to overcome limitations and weapons to destroy obstacles. Humans learn to cooperate with reality instead. Pete Griffin nodded enthusiastically. We found out that the universe is actually quite reasonable. If you explain what you want to do and why it would be good for everyone, most things are happy to help. Emperor Vashatar found his voice. Are you saying that humans can rewrite the laws of physics? Not rewrite, Alex Mitchell corrected. We negotiate with them. The laws of physics are not rigid rules that cannot be changed. They are more like guidelines that can be adjusted when there are good reasons to do so. He looked around the council chamber at all the shocked faces. Humans call it consensus reality engineering. When humans agree that something should work differently, and when that change would be beneficial rather than harmful, reality tends to accommodate us. High Counselor Durvan spoke for the first time since reading the report. How long have humans possessed these abilities? We have been developing them for about 100 years, Pete Griffin replied, but we only became really good at it in the last 50 years. We wanted to master the techniques before introducing ourselves to galactic civilization. Why are you telling us this now? Asked Intelligence Director Naltek. Because your empire has been investigating us, Alex Mitchell said gently. We thought it would be better to explain the truth rather than let you worry about unknown threats. Doctor? Nina Walsh made the glowing flower disappear back into empty space. Humans do not want to conquer anyone or destroy anything. We simply want to live peacefully and help make the galaxy a better place for everyone. We were hoping, Alex Mitchell continued, that the Empire might be interested in establishing formal diplomatic relations with humanity. As equals, not as a superior species dealing with primitives. Emperor Vashatar looked around the council chamber. Every face showed the same expression of amazed bewilderment. The Empire had spent 2,000 years believing they were the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. Now they had discovered that humans had transcended the very concept of technological limitation. Ambassador Mitchell, the Emperor said, slowly, I believe it would be in the Empire's best interest to establish peaceful relations with humanity. Alex Mitchell smiled warmly. Excellent. We look forward to a long and beneficial friendship between our peoples. As the three humans prepared to leave, Pete Griffin turned back to the council. Oh, and thank you for the lovely building. It really enjoyed having visitors who appreciate good architecture. After the humans left, the council chamber remained quiet for a long time. Finally, Emperor Vashatar spoke. It appears that everything we thought we knew about the galaxy was wrong, he said. Humans are not a primitive species using advanced technology. They are something far more remarkable, a species that has learned to cooperate with the universe itself. High Counselor Durvan nodded slowly. The question now is how we adapt to a galaxy where humans can make the impossible become routine. Emperor Vashtar looked out the window at his vast imperial fleet. We learned to be very good neighbors, he said quietly, because we have just discovered that we share the galaxy with beings who can rewrite reality through the power of cooperation and goodwill.